So basically, quantum mechanics says this, that your subjective mind has an effect on the objective world at the very, very tiny, tiny level of subatomic particles. So, you know, Einstein and Planck were fooling around with subatomic particles. They were putting energy into electrons, disturbing electrons, and they were expecting those electrons to fall like an apple falling from the tree, just like the Newtonian predictable world, you know, in a very smooth and consistent way. And when they did that, it didn't happen. The electrons were disappearing and reappearing, and it was more like a ball rolling down steps. And they all of a sudden realized that the tiny world of subatomic particles, atoms, don't behave like the very large world, like planets and suns and everything else, and apples falling from trees. So they started looking for the electrons, and as they start to look for them and measure them, they would appear. And so they realized that the observer, that the mind was so commingled at that level of subatomic particles that it was impossible to separate the two. And in fact, every quantum physics experiment, you have to have an observer present, because without the observer being present, it changes the outcome. So, you know, I've drank martinis with quantum physicists till sunrise talking about this, and they always say, yeah, you know, the observer effect, you know, Joe, the subatomic world is the only thing that it affects. It doesn't happen for very large things, and I always say the same thing. Maybe we're just poor observers. Maybe we can get better at observation and focus. So the quantum field is an invisible field of energy or frequency, and all frequency carries information that's beyond this space and time. There's no bodies there, there's no people, there's no things, there's no places, there isn't even time. It's one infinite field. They call it the fertile void, the 0 point, where there's nothing physical. But that's where all possibilities exist. And you can't enter it as an identity. You can't enter it as your body. In fact, when we teach people how to connect to that field, we say to them, now it's time to become nobody, no one, no thing, nowhere, in no time. And that means if you're not your body, but you have no attention on your body, no attention on your identity or the people in your life that you identify with, no attention on the things you own, the objects that you're aware of, no attention on the place you're sitting, the place you work, the place you sleep, your home, and no attention on the familiar past or the predictable future. There's only one thing that you are in that moment. That is awareness, consciousness. And that's the eye of the needle. That is the door to the quantum field, and you can't enter as a somebody. You got to enter as a nobody. So teaching people how to get to this point, that's part of the formula. And that means they have to be able to be there without a face, without a name, without a diet, without their problems, without their disease. They have to be able to dissociate from everything known in their life.
How?
Well,
meditation?
Yeah, that's one of the formulas. We teach people how to do that. So it's actually very simple. Most people narrow their focus on material things. Like our eyes naturally do it. Like we narrow our focus on objects. It's called a narrow focus or an object focus. Turns out when you're stressed or the fight or flight nervous system switch on, now you really narrow your focus because you're looking for the danger. You're anticipating the danger. So people get really stuck in a very narrow focus. In fact, when they're under stress, they obsess. They obsess about one thing. They're narrowing their focus, and they can't get beyond that one thought. Well, that's really adaptive if T-Rex is outside the cave, right? And you got to keep your attention. You got to stay aroused in order so you don't get eaten. Well, that becomes a habit. So that kind of what's called convergent focus is very unhealthy for the brain. As you're aroused by those chemicals, and you're shifting your attention when you're in that state from one person to one appointment to another problem to another person to another place. Every person, every thing, every object, every place has a neurological network in your brain. So as you begin to shift your attention from all these things and the brain is aroused, it's like a lightning storm in the clouds. Your brain is firing those networks very incoherently. And when the brain's incoherent, you're incoherent. So then do the exact opposite. Go from a narrow focus, a convergent focus, to a divergent focus. Open your awareness. Focus on nothing but space. And as you close your eyes and you sense space, you stop analyzing and you stop thinking. So as you're sensing space, you begin to slow your brain waves down. And as they slow down, all of a sudden the autonomic nervous system begins to merge and it comes forward. And it starts to synchronize those circuits that were out of balance. And what syncs in the brain links in the brain. So all of a sudden, the brain starts firing in a more coherent way. And when that happens, we call it getting beyond yourself. You forget about yourself. That is the moment you're entering that field. And you can't enter associated with anything known. You got to enter as an unknown. You have to put more of your attention on it and less of your attention on you. The higher the vibration, the higher the frequency, I mean, the higher the level of awareness or consciousness. And so what we see in our events is we see, or the first 2 days is about getting beyond you. Mm-hmm. And what I do is I set up the conditions where I go further than where people normally go. You know, they go to a certain point and then they finish, and I say, nah, we're going to go further. So we take them past that point, and sooner or later they start letting go. So when they start breaking through, they're contributing to the field. Mm-hmm. And we've measured the energy in the room after the first day of most of our events. In fact, the first day of many events, the energy goes up, and then the next day it goes up more. The next day it goes up, and that's available energy for people to heal. That's available energy for people who have a mystical experience. That's available energy for them to create with. So then it becomes an entraining process. And what we do really well, and our research shows this, is we teach people how to suppress their neocortex, shut the lights out in this mechanism here that's your memory bank of your known identity self. Turn that down. Dial that down, and our research shows that our students can do it very well. Now, once you suppress this melon here, the conscious mind, what do you got left? You got the subconscious mind, you got the autonomic nervous system, and that's the antenna. So when we see people doing this and they start in training, wow, they start having profound mystical experiences. People start having very profound energetic moments, and they're influencing one another. And of course, now you're moving a community of people across. And once you get to that certain state, then it just becomes magic. Everybody just goes. It happens. We were just doing an event in Mallorca last week. I got back on Sunday night, well, actually Monday morning, and we had 1,300 people there, and we solicited 1,300 people, and 1,300 people said, I had the most amazing week of my life. That everybody, the entire audience, had some type of personal transformation, personal breakthrough, amazing healing, or mystical moment that changed them for the rest of their lives. And it becomes a frequency that everybody becomes entrained to. Mm-hmm. And so then, by the same means, as people are starting to overcome all their old programs, nobody's complaining. Mm-hmm. And if nobody's complaining and you're the only one complaining at the lunch table, all of a sudden you become aware. Everybody kind of looks at you and you're like,
yeah, you stick out.
Oh, well, now I'm no one else is doing it. I don't have any agreement here. Mm-hmm. So they just finally they stop. Thanks. Yeah, I can tell you this, that wow, we have great accounts of mothers that have had grown adults with autism or mental health issues. Boy, they have an amazing transformation because mom's energy changed and it just affected them and children as well. So I think that, I always say, when I ran my clinic in the Pacific Northwest, I'd always say to the staff, our energy's got to be higher than every single person that walks through that door, because we want to bring everybody's energy up, right? So it works both ways. Some days you begin to entrain other people's frequency and it becomes magic. Other days you can't get beyond it and you're brought down to a lower level, and that's the work. That's the work every day. How'd I do today? Yeah. At the end of your day, ask yourself, how'd I do? When did I fall from grace? When did I go unconscious? Yeah. When did I lose it? Well, if it happened again, what would I do differently? Now you're evolving your own experience of self, right? And you say, well, the next time that happens, I'm going to rehearse how I'm going to be. Now, you're installing the hardware to be able to move through that experience. That's evolution, right? And I think that people start figuring that out really well. So some people return back into their lives and they do the work every day, and it just gets better. Some people get busy, they get tired, they miss a few days, they fall back into their old self again, and they gotta make their way back. And I always say to people, I don't care when you stopped, I just care when you start again. Here's the beauty behind it all. When the field starts responding, the universe starts giving you feedback. I swear, I've seen this so many times. When the magic starts happening and things start falling out of nowhere, you will look back at your entire past in that moment, and you're not going to want to change one single thing in your past because it brought you to the present moment. Yes. That's the moment the past no longer exists. That's the moment you're free. Yeah. That's when you say, it all makes sense. And so many people now in this work, when they start raising their awareness, We just had a guy send a video in from Spain. I was laughing so hard at him because he had a really difficult life when he was young. And he just kept saying, in this beautiful way, it all makes sense now. I understand. I understand everything. I've never felt this much love in my life. Of course, he's not viewing it from that same level of consciousness, that same level. He's viewing it from he's not in the labyrinth. He's looking at it from above, and it all makes sense. And it's not discontinuous. It's unified, because as you get closer and closer to connecting to that unified field, that invisible field of energy that connects everything material, as you get closer and closer to it, you experience greater levels of wholeness, greater levels of oneness. And as you do that, you feel less separation. So things all make sense. They all connect because you're at a greater level. Imagine where you can go with that. I mean, that's the ultimate goal, is where you need nothing because you're so whole, you're so connected. That why would you need anything? You feel like you have it already. I think that's the state in which the uncommon happens.